Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Every week we bring you all the latest from New Zealand, and this week is jam-packed. We've got international relations, the economy, even education and healthcare. Get ready for a whirlwind tour of Aotearoa.
It's really quite amazing how all these different things we're talking about come together to show what life is really like in New Zealand right now. And of course, we'll break it all down and see how it all might affect you directly.
Love it. All right, first up, let's zoom in on the world stage. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon just sent his congrats to, you guessed it, Donald Trump on winning another term as U.S. president. Luxon really emphasized that close relationship between New Zealand and the U.S., especially since America is, get this, New Zealand's second biggest export market.
Yeah, this isn't just a quick congrats and move on. It shows how much New Zealand wants to stay tight with countries in the Indo-Pacific, especially the ones they do a lot of business with. It's going to be interesting to see how things shake out between them and the U.S. with Trump back in charge. U.S. foreign policy could shift, who knows?
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. Now, let's bring it back home to New Zealand. How about that cost of living? The latest numbers show a 3.8% jump in the past year. The big drivers, you guessed it again, those interest rates and insurance premiums keep climbing.
3.8% might not sound like a lot, but let me tell you, it's hitting people's wallets hard. Mortgage interest, for example, has shot up like 18.2%. That's putting a real squeeze on homeowners, especially the ones stuck with variable rate mortgages.
And it's not just homeowners, right? Rent's going up, really hurts Maori and beneficiary households. It's tough, trying to make ends meet when those everyday costs keep going up.
Exactly. You said it perfectly. These economic numbers, they're not just numbers on a page. They're real life for people, and it's not affecting everyone the same way.
Okay, so let's switch gears now to education. New Zealand is launching this brand new math program. It's for year 7 and 8 students who are, struggling a bit with math. It's pretty intense, 12 weeks of tutoring. And they're putting some serious money behind it, $2 million to be exact. It's part of this big plan to get 80% of year 8 students up to speed in math by, wait for it, 2030.
That's interesting. Focusing so specifically on one area and those particular kids makes you wonder, could this work for other subjects too? Like, what about reading or even science? Could this be a whole new way to get kids up to speed where they're falling behind?
That's a great point. Maybe this focused approach could really change things up.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of focus, the Inland Revenue Department, they had a bit of a mishap with their social media advertising.
Yeah.
To slam on the brakes on their whole targeted ad campaign. Why? Because they accidentally spilled some taxpayer data onto those platforms.
Yeah, it's a wake-up call. Data privacy, it's crucial, especially when you're dealing with sensitive info like that. It just shows even when you're trying to do things right, things can go wrong, and the consequences can be big. It really makes you think, how can we keep our data safe in a world that's going digital faster and faster?
You're spot on. Data security is more important than ever these days. Okay, so let's jump into the world of work now. Remote work, it's still booming in New Zealand. A recent survey found about a third of Kiwis were working from home, at least some of the time, last quarter.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? The pandemic, it really shifted how we think about work. And now remote work is here to stay, at least for now. It makes you wonder, what's going to happen to offices? How do we balance work and life when they're both under the same roof? And what about being productive and working together when everyone's spread out? Lots to think about.
So many things changing, for sure. But while remote work is going strong, the job market itself, not so much. Unemployment's up, hitting 4.8%, the highest it's been in almost 4 years. Businesses are being cautious, hiring less, and the whole economy is slowing down.
It's definitely something to watch. Could have ripple effects everywhere. What does this mean for businesses? For people trying to find a job? For the whole New Zealand economy? Lots of questions.
And on top of all that, wages aren't growing as fast as they were. Although, got to point out, public sector wages are doing a bit better than private sector ones.
Yeah, that difference between public and private sector wages, it's worth keeping an eye on, could create some tension down the road, maybe even affect future wage negotiations. And that could spill over into the whole economy.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears again, this time to mental health. The government's getting ready to launch their new Suicide Prevention Action Plan. It covers 2025 to 2029, and they're really putting a lot of emphasis on catching things early and making sure there are enough people working in mental health services.
It's good to see them taking mental health seriously. It's such a huge issue, not just in New Zealand, but all over the world. Maybe what New Zealand's doing, focusing on preventing things before they get bad and building up the workforce, maybe other countries can learn from that.
Here's hoping. Now let's take a look at a completely different issue, the fight against gangs, especially in Auckland. The police, they've had some wins this year, seizing over $11 million in assets from gangs. That's more than 4 times what they got last year.
Wow, that's a lot. Shows they're serious about taking down these gangs. But it does make you wonder, what happens next? Will it actually make things safer in the long run? Or will all that criminal activity just pop up somewhere
It's
else?
like a never-ending game, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not just local gangs they're worried about. They're also trying to keep members of overseas gangs, especially the Mongols, from coming into the country for this event they're planning in Canterbury.
Yeah, they're being proactive for sure, trying to keep things safe. I guess it shows that organized crime, it's not just a local problem anymore, it's international. And that means countries need to work together to tackle it. It's complicated. It's amazing, right, how all these separate things, like pieces of a puzzle, fit together to show us what's happening in New Zealand.
Totally. Speaking of fitting together, we were just talking about unemployment and the economy slowing down. Do you think all this remote work could be playing a part in that?
Oh, absolutely. As more people work from home, offices might become less important, less need for all those services that go with them. So businesses and city centers could suffer, and people in those traditional office jobs might lose their jobs.
Makes sense. And think about it. If fewer people are driving to work, what happens to transportation? And those shops and cafes in the city, they rely on those commuters.
Exactly. It's all connected. When we look at the economy, it's not just about the numbers, it's about how it all works together. But hey, remote work isn't all bad news. New Zealand could actually benefit from it in some ways.
What?
Well, for starters, working from home can give people more flexibility. They can juggle work and family better, which can make them happier, more productive. Even open up jobs for people in rural areas or those who can't easily commute.
That's a great point. It's all about adapting, isn't it? Figuring out how to make it work and minimize the downsides.
Definitely. Now, going back to what we were saying about gangs, the government is taking a hard line, seizing assets. But if we really want to stop gangs, we have to understand why people join them in the first place, right?
Right. Things like maybe they're struggling financially, there aren't many jobs, or they feel isolated, those sorts of things.
Exactly. Giving people better opportunities is key. Good education, jobs, strong social programs. That's how you build communities where gangs can't take root.
So it's more than just cracking down on crime. It's about giving people a chance to succeed.
Exactly. It's about tackling the root causes. Speaking of tackling things, let's go back to mental health for a bit. The new Suicide Prevention Action Plan sounds like a good start. But what do you think are the most important things New Zealand can do to actually help people?
Yeah, it's great they're taking action, but what can actually make a difference?
We have to get better at spotting the warning signs and helping people before it's too late. That means teaching kids about mental health, getting rid of the stigma, and making sure everyone can get help when they need it without breaking the bank.
But didn't we talk about healthcare worker shortages earlier? Won't that make it hard to find enough mental health professionals?
Oh, yeah, that's a huge barrier. We absolutely need more trained mental health workers, more funding for training, making it easier for people trained overseas to work here, incentives to work in areas where they're really needed.
Those are all good ideas. And what about preventing mental health problems in the first place?
Absolutely crucial. We need to start young, promoting mental well-being in schools, workplaces, everywhere. Help people learn how to manage stress, build resilience, create supportive environments where people feel comfortable talking about their mental health and getting help if they need it. It's about changing the culture so people don't feel ashamed to ask for help.
So it's about taking care of individuals and addressing the bigger social issues that affect mental health.
Exactly. It's about building a society that prioritizes mental well-being. Full stop. Now let's swing back to the media. Those job cuts at TVNZ, especially in regional newsrooms, that's worrying. What do you think it means for local news coverage?
Yeah, those local news teams are so important, keeping people informed, holding local officials accountable. It's worrying to see them cut back.
You're right to be concerned. Without those local reporters, communities might not get the news they need. They could become more vulnerable to misinformation and manipulation.
That's scary. It really shows how important local journalism is to a healthy democracy. People need access to accurate information to make informed decisions.
Absolutely. It's a problem everywhere, not just in New Zealand. Local news is struggling, and we need to pay attention.
It's a global trend we can't ignore. Okay, last but not least, let's go back to dental care costs. It's a big problem for a lot of people. Something needs to be done.
Totally agree. Everyone deserves affordable dental care. Putting off treatment just because of money, it just leads to bigger, more expensive problems down the road, like emergency surgery, which is never fun.
So what can we do about it? We talked about universal dental care briefly. Are there other options?
One idea is to make dental care free for young adults. They often fall through the cracks. They're too old for kids coverage, but not old enough to afford it on their own. They end up neglecting their teeth, and that can cause problems later.
Makes sense. What else could work?
Prevention is always key. Things like adding fluoride to the water supply, that can really make a difference, especially for low-income communities who can't always afford regular checkups.
Great ideas. So helping those who need it most and focusing on prevention, those are two key pieces of the puzzle.
Exactly. It's about finding creative solutions and thinking long-term. We need to train more dentists and make it easier for dentists trained overseas to work here if we want to really solve this problem.
It's a big challenge, but it seems like there are some good ideas out there. Hopefully New Zealand can make dental care more affordable for everyone.
I'm optimistic. It's about finding those smart solutions and investing in prevention. That's how everyone benefits in the end.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? International relations, the economy, education, healthcare, the media. New Zealand is facing a lot of challenges right now.
We have. But through it all, you see the Kiwi spirit shining through. They're tough, they're innovative, and they're determined to make New Zealand even better.
It's inspiring, really.
Mm.
And as we've seen, all these issues, they're connected. To find real solutions, you have to understand how they all fit together.
That's the beauty of these deep dives. It helps us connect the dots and see the bigger picture, both in New Zealand and around the world. It gets us thinking critically and considering different viewpoints.
Exactly. It's about asking questions, understanding the complexities of the world, and becoming more informed and engaged citizens.
Well said. We need to learn from each other, share what works, and work together to build a better future for everyone.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into all things New Zealand. In the meantime, we hope you'll keep thinking about the issues we discussed. How do they relate to your life, your work, your community? Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those questions coming. We're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into everything New Zealand. We talked about a lot of complex stuff today, but one thing keeps coming up: change. It's like New Zealand is trying to figure out its place in a world that just keeps changing.
It is a time of change, that's for sure. And like everywhere else, New Zealand is trying to find its way. The economy's shifting, work's changing, they're tackling social problems, even the media's in flux.
It feels like a time of big uncertainty, but also huge opportunity. It's not just reacting, it's about being proactive, shaping the future.
Absolutely. Look at remote work, for example. It's turned things upside down, but it's also opened up all these new ways to be flexible, to make work fit better with life. It's up to people, businesses, and the government to figure out how to make the most of it, to solve the problems that come with it.
And that whole idea of adapting, it applies to healthcare too. Dental care costs, that's a big one. It shows how important it is to make sure everyone has access to good, affordable healthcare. But that's going to take some out-of-the-box thinking, long-term planning, and a real commitment to fairness.
No doubt about it. And as we've seen, these aren't just New Zealand problems, they're global. We need to work together, share what we learn, because what works in one place might work somewhere else too.
Exactly. We can all learn from each other, take those good ideas and adapt them. It's about working together to make the world healthier.
Couldn't agree more. We're all connected, and seeing things from a global perspective is crucial if we want to find the best way forward.
Okay, before we sign off, you mentioned earlier how New Zealand is trying to strengthen ties in the Indo-Pacific. What do you think, what are the biggest chances and, well, the biggest roadblocks for New Zealand in that part of the world?
The Indo-Pacific is, well, it's a big deal. Economically, strategically, it's where a lot is happening, and New Zealand is right in the thick of it. The chance they have is to build strong relationships, boost trade, and make the whole region more stable.
But there's also a lot of, tension, potential for conflict.
Oh, absolutely. It's tricky. New Zealand has to figure out how to stay independent while also strengthening those alliances, how to balance economic interests with security concerns, how to stand up for what they believe in on the world stage. It's going to take some serious diplomacy and strategy.
Sounds like a tough job.
It is, but it's also a chance for New Zealand, even though it's a small country, to make a real difference in the world.
Well, I think we've pretty much covered it all today. Politics, the economy, education, healthcare, even international relations. New Zealand's got a lot going on, a lot of challenges.
Yeah, we've been all over the map. But through it all, you can see the Kiwi spirit. They're resilient, they're coming up with new ideas, and they're determined to build a better future.
It's been quite a journey, a real deep dive into New Zealand. We hope you've learned something new today, but more importantly, we hope it's got you thinking. How do these things connect to your own life, your work, your community? What questions do you have? Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep digging deeper into the things that shape our world. That's all from us this week on The Deep Dive. See you next time.